and imagine you could peel your foot open, almost like you're opening up a book. So we want to use your fingers to make your foot, or at least imagine that you can make your foot longer and more wide. And you can give a little extra attention to this spot right where the heel and the arch come together. There's this really thick connective tissue right here. And this is also the spot where your talus bone comes down. So it's the keystone bone of your foot that bears the majority of the weight of the upper body. So your tibia, your lower leg bone comes and sits right down on top of the talus. So if things are aligned well when you're standing up, and for most of us they're kind of not, but this is where all the weight would come down right here. Most of us are out of alignment in some way, and the body just kind of figures it out, which is pretty awesome. So when you're discovering some of the imbalances in your body as we practice, rather than thinking about it like, oh God, I'm so, where's the symmetry? I'm so uneven, or this side is so much tighter than the other. It's like, well, cool. My body figured out how to keep me upright, even though there was something a little bit off. So go ahead and thread your fingers in between your toes. Like one of those little foam things that you get when you go to get a pedicure. Remember pedicures? I got one over the summer, when the load count here was like a little bit lower, and I like cried. As soon as someone started touching my foot, I was just like, oh my God. Anyway, so wiggle your fingers in between your toes, even though that might not feel like the most comfortable thing. And then you can move the toes between flexion and extension, and then kind of holding at the lower leg. We're going to roll out the ankle. I've actually had, over the last week, 2 nurses reach out, my aunt and a husband of a friend, dealing with some plantar fasciitis from standing, but I also have to think it's the stress too. All the core muscles kind of getting really tense in response to stress up in the abdomen, kind of, and they're connected right down into the soles of the feet. So I just imagine that the stress is part of that. Go ahead and just slap the bottom of your foot, a little punch, wake it up. You can put it down and just dig out the space between the tops of the bones of the foot. Just imagine you can dig out like a little canal between each bone. So nice and wide, awake. You can just feel the difference between your 2 feet after that. It's like, ooh, it's awake, it's ready to go. So we'll do the other side, even it out. Don't be afraid to really dig in there. One benefit for me of working from home this last year is just I haven't really worn shoes very much. Just so good for your feet. Looking for the silver linings wherever I can find them right now. So you can imagine opening up your foot like a book, the bottom, spreading all those bones out. And again, a little extra attention to that spot right where the heel and the arch come together. Give each one of your toes a little pull, and then thread your fingers in between your toes. A little wiggle. and forth. Circle the ankle. I already did this once this morning, but when I was doing it the first time around, there were a lot of cracks, a lot of sounds. So you're gonna dig the space out in between your toes. Give it a little wig it out. And then what feels really good, and this is where a lot of cracking was happening for me earlier, is just making some waves with your feet. So flex the ankles, spread the toes really, really wide as they can go, and then start to point the feet, curling the toes down as far as they'll go, and then keep the toes curled, open the wave back up again, spread the toes. Do that a couple of times. Pretty good. A lot of cracking. One of my feet moves a little bit smoother than the other. Have you guys seen there's a video of this mother who was born without her, if it was her arms or just her hands, I can't remember. And her feet were able to be just as dexterous as her hands. She could like change diapers with her toes. Pretty amazing. So there's a lot of movement available in our feet that we kind of lose out on wearing shoes every day and when we're kind of disconnected from the ground. All right, so got new feet, grab a blanket. One of the other things that I noticed that happens for me, and maybe you guys feel some of this too, is when I've been in a lot of stress. We're gonna fold up a belly bolster so you can fold something about as narrow as this. So like something that could fit in between the two front points of your hips. And we'll roll it up. Even just like one little turnover might be enough. Or you can roll up something not much bigger than this. But all this tension that accumulates in here really serves to kind of disconnect the upper body from the lower body. I don't feel as grounded in my feet when I'm stressed. And some of that, you know, is that all that when we hold a lot of tension in the abdomen, we just don't have as free of a movement from the spine down into the legs. It's free of a connection. So we're going to do a little belly bolster to help that. So you'll have your little roll. It's going to go in the lower abdomen, above the pubic bone, below the navel, somewhere in there. So you can start on your forearms if you like. You can come all the way down, rest your forehead on your hands, or bring one cheek to the side, arms down by your sides. If you haven't done this ever or in a while, or if you have been really stressed, this can be pretty uncomfortable at first. You might feel some gas bubbles moving around, which can not feel great, but usually subsides after a few minutes here. Contents of your belly it's all pretty liquid in there, so if something needs to move and shift out of the way, it will. But if you do feel like there's a really strong heartbeat pushing back at you, or things start to go a little tingly or numb, shift around so that you come off of whatever you were pressing on that was causing the problem. Sometimes if you just shift your hips from side to side a little bit, that can help. And the way that I usually approach this, if it's been a while or if I've been really stressed, is just teeny bit at a time. So with every breath, with every exhale, would it be possible to relax some of the tension that you're holding in the belly so that you invite the blanket to sink in deeper? And it's not going to be an all at once. Maybe you just are able to let go of a little bit of the holding with every exhale. So when you inhale, you can actually move your breath right into the blanket, fill it up. And then when you exhale, how soft can you keep the belly so that the blanket sinks in? So your first reaction might be to just like tense up the belly and push the blanket out, because it's like, this is your soft, vulnerable part of yourself. So just a little bit at a time. And maybe physically you're not as tense, but maybe in response to the sensation, you know, you automatically start telling a story inside your head, or trying to find a way to not be with this sensation if it's uncomfortable. And so part of our practice of yoga is, how do we stay, keep our eyes open, and be present, even when things get a little tough. Slide your right knee up into a half frog position. So you bring the knee up straight out from the hip. Yeah. And that'll roll you a little bit more onto the left side. And you see what's going on over there. So your left foot, your left toes are nice and awake. Let's tuck them under. Tuck the left toes under, so the straight leg. Yep. And then reach back through that heel. Imagine that left heel, especially that spot in between the heel and the arch. Imagine that could drag you back away from the blanket. Can you feel that there's a connection from the foot up into the parts of the belly that are resting on the blanket? And then what if you crawl your left arm forward? So there's as much reach, kind of crawling forward through that left arm, as you have reaching back through that left foot. And if you remember that little wormhole that you had from your left nostril down the left side of the spine, along the inside edge of that left sit bone, can you now connect it all the way down the inseam of your left leg and out through the heel? You can let that go, straighten the right leg. If at any point your body needs more time in what we're doing, you just stay. So you could be here for the rest of class if you'd like. And if you're going to move on, we'll bend the left knee, bringing it up into a half frog position. And at first we just rest. What if you let gravity take your pelvis? What if you really stop resisting the floor? And then tuck the toes under. Reach back through the heel. And feel like there's a connection from the heel all the way up the inseam of the leg, up the side of the spine, and right up into your nostril. And then maybe crawl that right arm long. And then release. Tuck both toes under, both sets of toes under, reaching back through both heels, as if you could drag your whole body back away from the blanket. And then that might be enough. If everything feels okay, come on up onto your forearms for Sphinx pose. So elbows under your shoulders, forearms parallel. Go ahead and root down through all your knuckles, through the webbing of the fingers. And then imagine with your elbows pressing down, with your hands pressing down, that you could drag your chest forward, dragging your spine away from the blanket. Think about dragging the back of your heart forward and up away from the blanket, even as your legs try to pull you back. Good, and then release. You take the blanket out. Maybe stay on your belly for a minute, just see how it feels to be there without the blanket. How does it feel to breathe without the blanket? And then press back into child's pose. Crawling both arms forward as long as you had them when you were on the blanket. Reach back and down from your inner sit bones. Now you can stay here. Another option is to take the knees as wide as the mat or potentially even wider. So we're moving from child's pose towards a full frog, and any of the places in between are fine to stay. If child's pose, if you don't want to move into frog, but child's pose feels like not a comfortable place to hang out, you can lay on your back and bring your knees in towards your armpits. So when we're stressed, our body tries to make us small. Or starts to mobilize us to run away from the threat. So I find that the inner thighs tend to get pretty tight when I'm stressed. And it can take a while for the body to understand, like, okay, we're not under threat right now. Like this is a safe time to maybe stand down a bit. And so you can, as you've been working on the last couple of weeks, you can start to have that inner dialogue with the tension, with the muscles that feel sore and tight. Like, hey, I know you've been working overtime. It's okay. And maybe that's an actual verbal dialogue that you have in your head. Or maybe it's just the attention that you're giving, or your focus on the breath. So however you want to communicate with what feels tight, go ahead and do that. And you're trying to use the same tone that you would use if you were like soothing a scared kid. Or I had my brother's dog over the last 2 weeks, and there was some fireworks for New Year's. So, how would you soothe a puppy during fireworks? That's how you're going to talk to your inner thighs. Maybe the knees come even wider. If things are feeling comfortable and you want to take it further, you can take your hips forward so that they're in line with your knees. You could take your feet out and turn the toes out so that your feet are in line with the knees. After times of high stress, it can be hard to be still. Because when we're stressed, the nervous system is like, dude, we're not in a safe place right now. So being still can be hard. It's part of being able to slow it down, let go of some of the fidgets, let go of that urge to run. It can be just reestablishing a sense of safety in your body. And feeling how the ground holds you can be really helpful with that. Feel the ground underneath you. And then bring the knees back together. You could do a closed knee child's pose. You're going to tuck the toes under. In your child's pose, come up onto your hands. This might be a nice place to stay. You can spread your toes nice and wide. You can reach down and manually help spread them wide. You could sit back on your heels. If you're sitting up on your heels, can you remember your roots? And then whether you have your hands down or you're sitting on your heels, let's lift the knees up. So bringing the knees up towards the chest and then lift the heels up towards your sit bones. I find that this helps get into the smaller toes, the pinky, opening up the outer edges of the arch of the foot. And then you can drop the heels down and press into a standing forward fold. Release the base of the skull. Feel how your feet meet the ground. And so you feel how the ground holds your feet. Can your feet actively push into the floor? Waking up the legs. And then keeping your head nice and heavy, keeping your neck soft. Let's start to roll up from the bottom to the top of the spine, stacking one joint at a time. Eventually coming all the way up to stand on your feet. Just kind of roll the shoulders out a little bit. Maybe roll the neck out. And then take your feet a little wider than hips. We'll take the arms up and we'll hold on to the right wrist with the left hand and we'll just start to pull ourselves into a side bend over to the left, letting that right heel lift up off the ground. So to reground that heel, what we're going to do is still get nice and long along that whole right side of the spine, all the way up into the head. And then at the lower spine, I want you to imagine sliding down that little wormhole from the right side of the spine, down through that right inner sit bone, the inseam of the leg, all the way down to the heel. And then reground that heel. And we'll inhale, come back up to center, take the arms down. See how it feels. We'll do the other side. Holding the left wrist, reaching off to the right, letting that left heel lift up off the ground. So there's this big reach up and over, But then could you slide some energy down that little wormhole from your nostril, down the left side of the spine, through the inseam of that left sit bone, inseam of the leg, all the way to the heel. And inhale. Back up to center, keeping your feet under your hips. Hopefully your heels feel a bit more grounded. There's a freer connection from the upper body all the way down to the feet. Let's inhale, take both arms up. Exhale, chair pose. Inhale into low chair. So your thighs will come parallel to the ground. Arms reach straight ahead. Exhale, bring the fingertips down. Keep your hips low. We're going to push the floor to lift the chest up. Think about lifting the fronts of the armpits. Send the back of the heart forward into the front of the heart. And then fold forward. Release the base of the skull. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale, lower the hips, thighs parallel to the floor. Push the floor, inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, arms reach forward. Inhale, chair. Exhale, stand, sweep the arms down. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, chair. Inhale, low chair. Exhale, hands down. Inhale, lift the chest. And exhale, fold. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale, lower the hips. Inhale, lift the chest. If you move really slow here, it can just be one fluid movement without really stopping. Inhale, arms forward. Exhale, chair. Inhale, stand. Exhale, the arms come down. Inhale, the arms come up. Exhale, chair. Inhale, low chair. Exhale, hands down. Good, inhale, lift your heart. And exhale, fold. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale, lower the hips. Inhale, lift the chest. And just pause here. And then we'll step the left foot back into a lunge. Back knee lifted. Blocks under the hands if the floor is too far. Reach back through your left heel, the same way that you were reaching back through your left heel when you had the blanket in your belly. And remember the connection from your left nostril all the way down the left side of the spine, down the inseam of the leg, and through the heel. And as much as your leg is trying to pull you back through that heel, you're Your spine is climbing forward out of the hips. That's it. Nice. Nice. Maybe you don't need your hands. You're really plugged into that back leg. You might not need the hands. If you need the hands, there's no shame in needing your hands. You have hands. It's great. You can use them. All right, and then bring your hands down. If they're not down already, let's release the back knee. Keep your back toes tucked. Hold the front knee. Maybe the front knee slides forward over the front toes. Maybe the arms come up. You can hook your thumbs, pull them apart. There's still this feeling of down and backward flow through your leg, even as your spine tries to climb up out of your hips. Maybe there's a little bit of a back bend here. The shoulders can stay right in line with the ears. There's a little bit of a back bend. Good, and then bring the hands down. Step back into a plank. Pushing the floor away with your hands, with your feet. Your lower belly, where you have that blanket roll, is going to lift up towards your sacrum. And I want you to imagine you can tuck the bottom of your bottom right down into the top of the back of your thighs. Almost like you were trying to hide the bottom of your butt in the top of your thighs. And then lower all the way down. All the way down. You can keep your forehead on the ground, take your arms down by your sides, palms facing the floor. And then let's inhale, lift everything up, locust pose. Lift everything up. Hands lift up, front of the armpits pick up. Your spine is trying to crawl forward and up out of your hips like a snake, and then your legs reach back and up. Keep this back bend. Just bring your hands down onto the floor under your shoulders. Good. And then on your next inhale, cobra pose. Legs come down. And even when the legs come down, they're still reaching back, trying to pull you back, and your hands are going to help try to crawl your heart forward, crawl your spine forward. Good. Exhale into child's pose. Inhale, crawl your arms forward. Exhale, up to tabletop. And then downward facing dog. Step your left foot up into your hands. Likely it's going to take a couple of steps to get it up there, or you might have to reach back and pull it up there. So left foot forward, we're in our lunge with the back knee lifted. And again, can you feel that connection from your right nostril down the right side of your spine, down through the inseam of that right leg, out through the heel? If there's any discomfort in your lower back, sometimes if you imagine that you have a left leg, a phantom left leg that's doing what your right leg is doing, that can help even out, I think, the SI joints. Really helps to even those out and make it more comfortable. Maybe you don't need hands. You can hold the hips. Some days, I know I could hold myself up with my legs, but you're just exhausted, and it's totally fine to have your hands down. Okay. We can get really caught up in like what our body can and cannot do. And anytime I get that way too sometimes in my practice, like just reminding yourself that this is a practice in attention. Bring your hands down. We're doing all this stuff to challenge our attention, to help grab our attention, to help pull us into the moment. So whatever your body can and cannot do, doesn't really matter. All right, so back knee's gonna come down, hands onto the front knee. Maybe your front knee slides forward over the toes. Those of you that are really flexible, rather than just kind of hanging in the joints of this hip, I want you to think about taking the very top of that right thigh bone and pulling it back a little bit. So it's moving towards that spot right below your butt. So if you're really flexible, it takes extra work to rein yourself in. If you're really stiff, you don't have to worry about that. So that's awesome. So you can be glad that you're really stiff. Arms up. Maybe hook the thumbs, pull the hands apart. And you think about the energy like flowing down into that back leg, even as you try to climb the rest of your body up your spine. All right, bring the hands down. Step back to plank. How do you feel? Lower all the way down onto your belly. Bring your forehead down, the arms down by your sides. Before you come up, I want you to feel into that spot right where the base of the skull meets the neck and get a little lift from there, and then pick the rest of your body up. Oh, Nina, you made it. I'm so sorry. I don't know what was happening with the meeting link this morning. Glad you found us. All right, take one more breath in. And then with the exhale, we just bring the hands under the shoulders. So everything else stays lifted, stays in the back bend, and the hands come down. And then we just tip it all back until the feet touch. Once the feet touch, legs are reaching back. And we use the hands to help pull the heart forward. Front of the armpits lift. Back of the heart nuzzles a little closer to the front of the heart. See if you can get a little lift from the base of the skull. And then we'll press back into child's pose. Inhaling to crawl the arms forward. Exhale, tabletop into downward facing dog. On your next exhale, come into your plank, bring your right knee into your chest. Push the floor away. Imagine you could grow your arms even longer. Pull that knee up as close to the chest as you can get it, and then step forward. Move the foot up so it's in between your hands. And then just pause here for a moment. I want you to tune in to that back leg. And I want you to imagine you could kind of reset that little wormhole from your nose, from your left nostril down through the inseam of your, down the left side of your spine, down through the inseam of your left leg. Taking all that length back to help ground your heel. Your heel comes down. And then inhale, come up into warrior one. You can bring your right hand down. We're going to inhale from the push of the left heel, get longer through the left fingertips. Take all that length forward, and you could bring your left forearm onto your thigh. You could bring the elbow outside the thigh. You could bring some of the arm outside the thigh. We're going to take a little twist. So wherever you were, if you have the forearm on the thigh, you can use that right hand to help open up the chest a little bit into a twist. Palms together. How can you keep your attention on what's happening right now? There's probably a number of things you could choose to pay attention to in this shape. There's some sensation you can watch. You can play around with how to keep your feet grounded. You can notice how you're reacting to this. You could be streaming all of your attention onto one spot on a wall. And then we'll unwind the twist, step forward into a fold. Push your feet into the ground to stand all the way up. Arms up. Exhale, hands to your heart. Feel your feet, the inseams of your legs, the sides of your spine. And then inhale your arms up. Exhale, fold all the way down. Lengthen your heart forward as you inhale. Step back to plank, exhale. Take a breath in plank. Your exhale, you can lower halfway down or all the way onto your belly. Back bend as you inhale. So cobra pose, baby cobra, upward facing dog, and then downward facing dog as you exhale. Take a breath in. Exhale, come into plank. Bring the left knee into the chest. Use your belly, pull it in, step it forward. And you're going to ground your back heel by creating that length. You can imagine it coming from the right nostril, great. Maybe you just lengthen your leg. I like to feel like I could slide all the way down, inseam of the spine, the inseam of the leg, and then the heel comes down. You're going to push into the ground to stand up. Bring your left hand down. And then we'll get really long, right heel to right fingertips. And then take it across. Forearm onto thigh, elbow outside of thigh, maybe arm outside of thigh. And whenever I notice that I'm just in my head, the first place I go is where I meet the ground. Really helps kind of bring things down. And it can help establish that sense of safety, knowing that the ground is holding you, feeling that there's support. So just the registering of the support, even though there's a lot going on above, can be enough to help pull you down a couple notches. Can you feel like there's a long line coming from your back heel all the way out through the crown of your head? So you don't have to collapse in. This looks nice. And we'll unwind. My hands down, step back into a plank. Release the knees and take a child's pose. Or kneel, or whatever else feels good right now. Okay, you can stay here. You can come up and grab a blanket. Instead of folding it into thirds the way that we did for the belly, just gonna fold it in half. So you have something about this wide. I know we're all working with different props here. So we're gonna roll up a blanket so that it's thick enough for a back roll, and that might be different for all of us. So again, for this roll, it might just be one turn of the blanket that's enough for you. You might roll it all the way up, anywhere in between. You want it to be big enough that it's like, creates some sensation, gives you something that's a challenge, but not so much that you can't even imagine being able to relax and breathe. Okay, so your breath is always a pretty good indicator on whether or not you've gone too far. So we're gonna put it right in the upper back, right behind the heart. And then maybe a block behind the head. You can have this block behind your head as high as it needs to be. Maybe have your knees bent, feet on the floor. When we're in a heightened state of stress, and the nervous system is trying to protect you, back bending may not be accessible, right? So taking all of the most vulnerable parts and just like putting them on display. So know that if this is really challenging right now, especially after the week that we all just had, that's so normal. And maybe you're in constructive rest instead of a back bend. You can keep the eyes open if that helps. Let your attention settle into the backside of the body. And so all the areas that you feel held. If this should start to become more comfortable, you can always take the block out or turn it down a notch under the head. You can extend the legs out straight. Interlace the hands. Spin the heels of the hands towards the ceiling. Reach up. You could push the ceiling away from you. And then keep all of that reach. Take the arms up alongside the ears, any amount. It might not go that far, but go in that direction. If you can get your arms right up alongside the ears, your shoulders are open enough for a wheel pose. Your shoulders are open enough for a wheel pose. We may or may not do wheel today, but I'm just, if you can get your arms right up alongside the ears, that's the same position that they would be for wheel. That's as open as the shoulders need to be. They don't need to go any further. Take another breath in. And then take your arms down by your sides. We're gonna move that blanket about, I don't know, a couple inches down the back. Go for like the middle of your back. So the lower thoracic spine, bottom of your rib cage. Someone was asking me this week for some tips on wheel. And when we're first learning that shape, trying to push up into it, it can feel like our shoulders are what's holding us back because they're trying to do all the work that our spine needs to do. But I think Barbara Baina, one of my teachers, said, if you want to practice back bending, you have to bend your back. So what we're doing right now, the supportive stuff over the blanket, it's really great prep work for any back bending practice. It's a really safe, supported way to invite the muscles of your spine to let go into this shape, to really let go in extension. And I don't know anybody that couldn't benefit from supportive back bending as a counter to what we all do in our daily lives as far as looking down at the phone. And I've been puzzling quite a bit during this quarantine. So just anything that has you kind of curved over looking down, this stuff is just a really nice counter to that. Move the blanket into the lower spine, the lumbar spine. The shape and the design of the bones in your lumbar spine really lend them to being able to do some back bending, good extension. Problem usually comes because the rest of your spine decides not to participate at all. So the lumbars end up doing too much. And that's where we start to, feel kind of pinchy, achy, some spasms. Like the muscles back there feel like they don't have enough space because they've done too much of the work. So this, with the roll in the lower back, can actually help create some space and give this nice little traction to the lower spine. You can release the weight of the hips. Release the weight of the rib cage. And then we'll push the blanket forward so it's under the hips. Bend the knees, feet on the floor. Go ahead and hug the knees. Sure, you can give them a squeeze right into the chest. Keep a hold of the right knee, reach the left leg up. Think about reaching up through the left heel, the inseam of the left leg, and then take that leg forward as far as it will go. Maybe the heel can come to the ground. Let's all bring the heel to the ground, even if that means you have to bend the knee a little bit. And when the heel touches the ground, press it down. So you wake up the muscles along the back side of the leg and then try to slide it forward along the floor. Let that come from that sliding down the inseam of the spine, the side of the spine, the inseam of the leg. Imagine pulling yourself forward off the blanket. And we'll do the other side. Knee in, hug both knees, right leg up, Grow it a little taller and then take it forward. Heel comes down, press it down, and you can push the floor away. And then can you slide that heel forward any amount? From the side of the spine all the way down. And then release. Both knees bent, feet on the floor. Take the blanket out. Feet under your knees. Root down through the heels, root down through the toes. Take a breath in. And then as you exhale, think about sliding the inseams of the thighs forward. Push the knees forward. Let that drag your hips up off the ground. And then push down into the feet and lift the hips up higher. You can hold the outer edges of your mat and pull it apart to help walk the shoulders underneath you and a little closer together. If it's possible, some of you might be able to interlace your hands. If you have your hands interlaced underneath you, you're going to push the hands down. If you're holding the outer edges of the mat, push the elbows down. Everybody press down through the shoulders. Gentle press through the back of the head. And the sides of the spine and the inseams of the thighs pull you forward even as you lift up. And then the knees move forward and you can lower your spine from the top to the bottom. Do that again. Take a breath in. Breath out. Inhale. Exhale. Inseams of the thighs and knees pull you forward. You might even feel like you're dragging yourself a little closer to your feet. And then push through the heels, lift the hips. Let the back of the heart slide up into the front of the heart. And then knees forward to lower from the top to the bottom. Take a breath in. Exhale, knees forward, drag your hips up off the ground. Inhale to push through the heels and lift up through the chest. And then if you want to practice wheel, from here I can walk you through. Bring the hands down on either side of the head, fingertips pointing towards the feet. Just like we did to come up into your bridge pose, and exhale is going to pull your hips forward and up towards your knees. But you might even walk your shoulders a little closer to your feet. So you want to feel like you're really grounded in your legs before you think about coming up. And then you push it to the hands. You can lift up. If you're up, you're thinking about in your bridge or your wheel, getting long down those little wormholes, the sides of the spine, down through the inseams of the legs. When it's time to come down, chin into your chest. See if you can lower from the top to the bottom of the spine. At any point, constructive rest can be where you stay. We're going to do 2 more. Take a breath in. Let the exhale bring you into your feet. Inner thighs forward, knees forward. Let the inhale keep you where you are or pull you up into your bridge. Feeling as grounded in the feet as you can. So there's that upward and forward motion through the hips. That helps really keep you in your feet. You could press up into a wheel if you like, or stay in your bridge. Your butt's on the ground. Keep breathing. And then come on down. Do 8 more breaths of something. What would be the best for you right now? 8 extra breaths in Shavasana. Maybe you come up for a bridge, maybe a wheel. Back bending, like I said, can be a challenge after being really stressed. But what I love about everything that we did today really helps get you grounded into your feet and your legs, which is necessary for being able to come up into some of these back bends, and helps keep you grounded when you come up into these back bends. So come on down if you're not down already. Hug the knees into the chest. Extend the legs up into the sky and just shake them out. And you're all on mute, so if you want to make some noise as you shake it all out, feel free. It's like, and shake the arms out. I like to shake my legs enough that I can feel my belly kind of jiggling around. All the contents of my belly jiggling around. And then let's take Shavasana. Support it as needed. Cover up. So we do all this stuff, the asana, the poses, the physical practice, to help prime the attention, help ground us so that we can work on some of the attention practices of yoga. So keeping your attention sustained on one thing. Maybe that one thing is how the ground holds you. It's kind of my go-to for stress. Stop, drop, and lay on the ground. Maybe you keep your attention sustained on the breath. Maybe you keep your eyes open in Shavasana and you keep your attention sustained on one spot if that makes you feel more safe. A long breath in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Roll over to either side. And come on up to a seat. Maybe tune back into those roots that we established at the beginning of practice. And then bring your hands to your heart, and we'll close out by chanting one Om. Thank you guys so much. Nice work this morning. I went a little bit over.